Well, hello, class. This is Pastor Harris. Again, wish we could be together, but for now, if you've missed our Zooms, you can catch the material on these videos that I've been making. And we are talking about the center today. Remember, I started a series a couple of weeks ago, the ABCs of the opening. And just to review that, what we said is that first thing we want to do, the A stands for advance pawns to control the center and activate the back row. We said be safe with your king, and not just your king, but everything. It's castling and then not letting your stuff get captured. We got to count and defenders, attackers and defenders and that kind of stuff. And then C, we said we want to control the center and capture material. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, controlling the center and capturing material. And so let's advance to that slide. Control the center and capture material. What does that mean? Essentially, it's going to mean occupying the center with your pawns and your pieces. And then secondly, just attacking it with your pawns and pieces. I said pause. Your pawns and pieces here. You want to attack the center with your pawns and pieces. So in the rest of the video, I just want to show you what this looks like. Explain the center a little bit more, and it will demonstrate a game where this is done very well. Okay, so what we have here is a chessboard. It's empty, and I just want to review what the center is. We talk about the inmost center, these four squares, and you can see, so when people talk about the center, that's usually what they're talking about. Now, you could also categorize these squares around those four central squares as center as well. And sometimes I've heard this referred to as the outer center. So your inner center and your outer center, right? And so that's the center of the board. So the idea in controlling the center is that when you have pawns, those pawns are in the center, right? Something like that. You want to put them in the center. Or there are some cases where when people develop their pawns, for example, in the beginning of a game, for example, let's say a lot of times white might play something like this, okay? And even though that pawn is not in the inner center, it is fighting for or attacking an inner center square. And there's reasons for playing a move like this so that it keeps black from doing certain things. We won't go into it. There's a lot of things that I'm trying to teach you guys that are really just basic foundational principles where there's nuance to it and more details. And we're not going into the nuance. That's for a later lesson for more advanced students. But you guys are beginners, so we're just going through some of the introductory stuff to make sure you understand it. So controlling the center is putting your pieces in the center or fighting for the center. Now, the question that is often asked is why? I mean, you can just do it, but why? Why should I fight for the center and control the center? You know, you'll have a lot of people playing games where a lot of beginners where they're wanting to do stuff like this. And black's like, oh, okay, I'll do the same thing on the other side. And they're just like, oh, okay, I'll just, you know, march the pawn up the board. And they don't understand that you have to play with some purpose and strategy that involves putting your pieces in certain places. And so let me explain why. And the simple answer is this, that the better you control the center of the board, the more control you have of the other areas of the board as well, because everything usually has to come through the center. And so when your pieces are in the center, generally that means they control more squares. So let's show an example with the knight. Here's a knight. What squares does the knight control on the corner of the board like that, on the edge? You've got basically two squares that knight can go to, including the one that he's already on. All right? Now compare that as the knight gets closer to the middle of the board, but still staying on the edge. 1, 2, and now 3, right? Now compare that as he continues to get closer to the middle, but still he's on the edge of the board, right? The closer he gets to the E and the D file, the more he can control, the more squares he can control, up to 4 squares, right, in front of him, right? Okay, so now same thing, he gets to the D file, it's not gonna change, right? That's the most he can control when he's still on the edge of the board. And then, but then when he gets to the F file, it's gonna decrease, right? Not F file, when he gets to the G file, it's gonna decrease, right? Now he's down to 3 again. Okay, so here's what happens. And that's gonna be the same here. He's on the corner of the board, 1, 2. How many squares do you think he's gonna control when he's on this edge? Well, let's look. 1. What else does he control? 2, 3. That's the same as when he was over here. Now let's go up a little. Now what do you think it's going to be? 1, 2, 3, 4. It's on the edge of the board. And that's going to continue until he gets here. And then what do you think it's going to be? 3, right? 1, 2, 3. Anywhere this knight is on the edge of the board, whether he's on the 8th rank, the H file, the A file, or the 1st rank, it's going to be that same pattern. But now look at when he moves up to that inner part of the edge. So now where he's on B2. So you got 1, 2, 3. You can count with me, kids. 4. Oops, 4, right? He's got 4 squares, whereas when he was here, he only had 3 squares, right? Because he's getting closer to that 4th and 5th rank. So the closer he is to that 4th and 5th rank in the E file and D file, the more squares he's controlling, right? All right, so the same thing's gonna hold true as we 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Look at that. 6. Look at that. And now he, because he's off of the edge of the board. That's why they say knights on the rim are dim. Knights don't like to be on the edge of the board because they don't control as many squares, right? And so this is a fun exercise to do to just prove that pieces are better when they're towards the middle of the board. There's your 6 squares, and it's going to be the same pattern all the way around that inner edge of the board. Let me outline it for you. If the edges, let me do it this way. All right, let's start all over. Okay, if this is the edge or the rim, okay, and call that the outer rim, just like the movie, right? This is the inner edge. You could call it the inner edge, which is still not in the center, right? But it's the inner edge. So the closer he gets towards the center, the more squares he'll control. Now let's go here. This is the B knight's favorite square, right? And so look at how many squares he controls. How many do you think it's going to be? 1. You should be able to see the patterns. 1, 2, 3, right? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Can't control any more squares than that. 8 squares. And then, of course, the one that he's on. So when you're in that outer center, right? That's what we called this, right? 1, we said this is the inner center. We said this is the outer center. Okay, sorry, my mouse needs new batteries, I think. All right, we said, so when a knight is in that outer center, he controls 8 squares. And the interesting thing is, let's see, what if we move him all around that outer center, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's the same. Okay, until you get to the inner edge, and then it's going to be like we saw before. And so that's why knights like to be in the center, anywhere in these squares, right? Knights love to be in these squares. And there are other things that we can talk about with reference to the knights, like the outposts that they like in the center and things like that. But that's another lesson. But knights like to be anywhere in that inner center or the outer center of the board. So let's move to a different piece. Again, we're answering the question, why is the center so important? What about the bishop? Let's bring this bishop over here. Let's count the squares, all right? You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 squares. All right, now he's on the corner, right? Now, when he moves anywhere on the edge of the board, it's going to be the same. 1, 2, 3, and we're counting the square that he's on. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so that's the same. Anywhere on the edge of the board, it's going to be 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, as he moves towards that inner edge of the board, it's going to change. Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, 10 squares that he controls here. Well, that's great. He controls 10 squares. That's 2 squares more than what he did before. And it's going to be the same no matter where he goes on this inner edge of the board. Now, what if we go into the outer center? Now let's count. How many do you think it's going to increase by? Have you seen a pattern yet? Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We knew about that, right? 9. Let's use my keyboard mouse here. 10, 11, 12. So 8, 10, and now 12 in the outer center. And now when you move to the inner center, and it's going to be the same anywhere on the outer center. Now when you move to the inner center, what do you think it's going to be? Can you guess 14 maybe? Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 different squares that it controls. So again, the more squares that you can control, the more things that you can capture, and the better your fight is going to be. And that's why it's good to control the center. We could do the same thing with the other pieces, you know, queens. Rooks are a little bit different because no matter where rooks like to fight from the edges. So a rook controls 8 squares going this way and 8 squares going this way. And it doesn't matter whether or not he's, you know, on this square. It's going to still be 8 squares going this way and 8 squares going this way. But see, the thing with rooks is they need to be on open files where they can get out and control pieces. But again, so this is a really good lesson for you to understand that you want to develop towards the center. Occupy it with your pieces and then attack pieces in the center. Now, we said that the C stands for control the center, but it also, we said we added a capture material, right? It's because if you're fighting for the center and you realize that you've won the battle for the center and you can capture material in the center, then that's great. Or, you know, another reason that I added that C, you know, capture material is because I see a lot of times people play and they don't realize when they can capture a piece, because you want to gain material on your opponent. And that just means that you take your opponent's stuff and don't let them take your stuff. But you have to count attackers and defenders to know when to do that. And that was what the last video was about. All right, so before we finish this video, I want to show you a good example of fighting for the center in a really it's an interesting game played by a man named Paul Morphy a long time ago. All right. So Paul Morphy lived in the 1800s. This is a game that Paul Morphy played as white versus a man named James McConnell in around 1849 or something in New Orleans, Louisiana, in the United States. And we're going to see a good, Paul Morphy really knew how to control the center. And let's see how he plays against his opponent. Let's see, let's start. All right, let's look at this. E4, most popular first move. Look at him. He's in the center. He's in the inner center. He's fighting for the center, and he's controlling it. That's a great first move. What was the second? E5, the most common response. So everything is equal right now, right? Fighting for the center. Then knight F3. All right, so here's where, if you're playing as black, you have to realize, okay, white is attacking my piece. So I either need to attack white's piece, or I should say pawn technically, because pawns and pieces are different. So I either need to attack white's pawn, or I need to protect my pawn. So let's see if McConnell realizes that. Yes, he does. But McConnell makes an error that I don't know if they knew about very well back then. One of the I shouldn't say error, but I think it's not the most accurate way to play. And the reason I would say that, you can even see, like right now, white has an advantage by 0.2. I'm not going to explain what that means right now, but now white's advantage goes up to 1.2 after that play. You don't like to bring your queen out early until you get your other pieces developed, because then the queen becomes a big target. But at least black is protecting his piece, and he's trying to fight for the center, so that's good. Now, what does Morphy play? Morphy just plays a regular developing move, the knight to its favorite square. That B knight to C3 is what he really likes to go there. Still fighting for the center. All right, let's play. What's the next move? C6. What's going on here? Does he let out a piece? No. But he is fighting for the square. So now for the next move, white wants to bring a pawn here. Black wants to bring a pawn here. Black is protecting it once with this pawn. But notice, white's also fighting for that square, fighting even harder than black is. And so right now, white still wins that square. So I'm not exactly sure what James McConnell was thinking with that. Maybe he should have just developed a piece, because now this knight, if he's going to develop, has to develop to the edge of the board there, or he's going to have to wait. And this knight can't go to his favorite square. He's going to have to go here or to the edge of the board. So anyway, let's keep going. D4. All right, great first move. Now, why, some of you think, why would he put a pawn right there where another pawn can take him? Well, let's count. This is why you have to count attackers and defenders to decide if a move is worth it or not. So this pawn is defending this square twice, once with the pawn, once with the queen. White has this knight attacking that square and this queen attacking by X-ray, if you can see that. So they both have two. So now you've got to count, and you have to say in your head, white goes, and then black takes, and then white, and then let's take that back. Then white takes, and then black takes again, and then white takes. So white wins. So that's how you have to do it. You have to know when you have an equal amount of attackers and defenders on the square. All right. The person that goes there, the person that attacks that square first is going to lose. That's essentially what happens. And so Paul Morphy knew he could do this without consequence. And so what's the next move? E takes. Well, that's interesting. Can that pawn take that square and get away with it? Well, we just counted that he can't. But Paul Morphy doesn't take it yet. Paul Morphy decides, I'm going to attack this queen. Since you wanted to bring it out early, let's make your queen run around. All right? So we're still looking at, and that queen has to run. Now look at Morphy's control of the center. He's got this square and this square and this square. He's got his queen still controlling the center, whereas black just has really this pawn and this queen. Should have done that in a different color. All right, so let's see how the game continues. Queen had to move and get out of the way, or it was going to be captured, right? Now, controlling the center, going right through the inner center, attacking this queen, which shouldn't have come out early. McConnell can't leave his queen there, right? So McConnell moves. Now, did Paul Morphy make a mistake by leaving his pawn unprotected there? Maybe that's what Black was thinking. He takes that pawn. So what can Morphy do? He's about to lose a rook, right? What's going to happen? Let's continue to see. Well, the rook goes there. Why can that rook go there without consequence? Because the knight is protecting him. And now where's the queen going to go? So Morphy was probably thinking, if he takes my pawn, then I'll just attack his queen, and his queen's going to run out of spaces to go. And that's what he was thinking. He thought ahead, right? So now where's the queen going to go? Queen goes there, but let's continue. Let's see what Morphy does. Now this rook is on an open file and can move around. It's protected by his pawns. We're going to go on a queen hunt, it looks like. Now the queen goes to h5, and what does Morphy do? He can still bring his rook there. Why? Because when Morphy moved his e-pawn, his bishop was activated. And now the bishop has the square. Now it goes through the outer center, and it's not fully developed yet, but it's still protecting that rook. Meanwhile, Black is running out of squares for his queen to escape to. Now let's see what happens here. Now the bishop comes back, and now we're not talking about controlling the center so much as attacking the queen. That bishop already had control of the center, but now Morphy sees how Black's going to lose his queen. So he continues to play. Let's see. We'll finally take that pawn back, which Black really shouldn't have done. And now look, White's advantage is up 3.9 points, right? Okay, almost 4 points. And keep going because that queen is just wasting time and moving around and doesn't know where to go. Look at how Black is failing to control the center by putting pieces in it or occupying it or attacking it. It's not doing a very good job. Meanwhile, White has everything in the center protected. So game continues. Knight comes up, right? Now, Black thinks, I'm going to kick this rook around, okay? Now, why can White leave his rook there? Morphy can leave his rook there because he has a knight in the center, which is controlling lots of squares, so now he can attack the queen again. And as long as we're attacking the queen, we're not worried about our rook getting taken because a queen is worth way more than a rook. So the queen moves yet again. How many times has Black had to move this queen? All right, and so White checks Morphy here. Morphy checks McConnell here. White checks Black. And now you should start to see Black's not looking great. Look at the advantage for White. It's 8.3 now. That's like having 8 pawns or almost having a whole queen up over your opponent. So that knight is taken. He had to do that, right? But look at that square. The queen is protecting and attacking the center. So that piece is attacked twice, but protected only once, right? Protected once by the queen. So what's going to happen? He takes it with check. So now the king has to get out of check. Now the king can't castle. Whew, this is a rough game, right, for McConnell. Bishop to his favorite square, attacking the center, attacking that queen again. Everything's protected. Not worried about the rook not being protected yet because we're attacking a queen. So McConnell has to move that queen again. Oh, boy, this is looking rough, huh? Okay, so what does Morphy do? Morphy takes. Now at this point, isn't this knight unprotected? No, it's not. It's got a bishop. And it's only attacked once. And it's with check. So Black has to get out of check. King has to move again. Now you could probably start to see the moves that that white can make to just take advantage of McConnell's inability to control the center here. But yep, the queen comes up, check. Black's got to get out of check. And so this square is defended by the knight and the pawn. So what do you think he's going to take with? He takes with a pawn. So now what does Black do? You never want to be running around with your king like this. Look at this. It's just nothing. You know, Black should realize at this point he's going to lose. In fact, white has mate in 3. It's forced. There's nothing he can do about it. And that's the game. So you look at Morphy's pieces. All his pieces are out and active. He didn't even get a chance to castle because he was on, you know, he was taking advantage of Black's mistakes. And so it was very good. So anyway, hopefully that game was fun to watch. And I think what we're going to do now is say goodbye. And I look forward to seeing you on Wednesday in the live Zoom. Hopefully many of you can make it. And if not, hopefully these videos are helpful for you. I look forward to being able to be together again. You guys take care. God bless.